Hello, I'm Doc Hamels. I'm the host of Chautauqua Sunrise, and I'll also be your host today for Chautauqua Candidates. This is a series of 6 interviews which will be aired during the week of October 3 through the 9th. Our producer, Chris Burt, invited all the candidates for the following offices: District Attorney, County Executive, New York State Assembly, 150th District, New York State Senate, 57th District, and U.S. Congress, 23rd District. Not all candidates accepted the invitation. This interview is the first in the series of 6, and it's featuring Mr. George Borrello, who is running for the office of New York State Senate, 57th District. And I want to welcome you back, George. Good afternoon.
Good to be back, Doc. Good to see you.
Thank you. George, I have some general questions for you here in a minute, but we are encouraging candidates to take a little bit of the time just to say whatever you want to say about yourself or introduce yourself to the viewers.
Thank you. Well, for those of you that don't know me, I'm George Borrello. I am currently the senator for the 57th Senate District. I won a special election last year, having deja vu all over again as we do this again. Previously, I was Chautauqua County Executive, and before that, a part-time county legislator. My wife Kelly and I live in Sunset Bay, up in the north end of the county on beautiful Lake Erie, and we are business owners in Sunset Bay. So that's kind of the quick rundown and recap.
Woo! That was a little bit faster than I thought. Okay. All right, well, playing off of what you were saying, you have moved pretty quickly from county legislator to county executive and now our state senator. During all that time, how did you affect change?
Well, that's a very good question. You know, even in my time as a county legislator, I actually spent 8 years as a county legislator. I was able to work with so many others, regardless of party, to get some things accomplished. We were able to downsize government, starting with the county legislature, when we downsized from 25 to 19 members. I headed up a task force that looked at how we could do government more efficiently throughout Chautauqua County, and as a result we had consolidations of government, and in general we worked together. Right now Chautauqua County government, in my opinion, has done well and worked efficiently, and I'm proud to have been a part of that as both a county legislator and as the county executive. And now I would say, even in this pandemic, I feel like myself, again with the assistance of others, including Assemblyman Andy Goodell, we have indeed been able to effect change. Andy and I put forth the Restart New York plan. This was on April 15th. We sent this to the governor and his team, and that became the template statewide for reopening New York State on a regional basis. And although we didn't officially get credit for it, I can tell you that we did hear from members of state government that that indeed was the template that was used, so we could restart New York's economy regionally, and I'm proud to have been a part of that. Awesome.
Andy was on the show Chautauqua Sunrise a few weeks ago, and he said the very same thing. You didn't get credit. Well, anyways, well, that's great. During these various positions, and now as state senator, what surprised you? Anything?
Wow, that's a good question. What surprised me? Being a business owner and in elected government for 10 years, not a lot surprises me. Mm-hmm. But I will say this. I've been doing a farm tour. I was recently made the ranking member of the Senate Agriculture Committee. And I've been touring farms not just in the 57th Senate District, but throughout the state. And I guess what has surprised me more than anything else is how resilient the people are in this state. And I'm not saying I didn't think people were resilient. I'm saying to the extent that they are. Mm-hmm. In this pandemic. This is something that hasn't happened in many generations.
100 years, yeah.
Right. So to take something so unknown, where there are so many pitfalls, and to see how resilient we have been, it has really been a pleasant surprise, more than anything else.
Okay. You mentioned ranking
member of the Senate Agriculture Committee.
What does that mean?
Basically, it means I'm if you will, the highest ranking Republican on the committee. Whenever they, because the Democrats are in the majority, you have the chairman, who is a Democrat, and then I am I guess the Republican chairman, if you will, of the committee, although I don't have a chairman's role. I'm the highest ranking member. And this is usually chosen by someone who has hopefully the chops, if you will, and the experience to represent that committee and the constituents that committee works for.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that area of ag in a little bit, but I have a question that you kind of connected with me that I had a question about, and it was downsizing or making things more efficient in government. And I've been dying to ask you this question. Tell me where you got this idea of splitting New York State into 3 chunks. Because some of it, no, seriously, many of us in education years ago talked about this sort of thing, and we got poo-pooed on this because Wall Street isn't in our backyard here, and we would starve to death because we wouldn't get enough financial support because of that. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, first of all, there's been a lot of proposals like this. This proposal I supported because it's not about literally breaking the state up. It's not about like a Virginia, West Virginia kind of a thing. This is New York State, still one state, but having 3 autonomous regions that really ultimately end in local control. That's what we need. And you know, when people say, well, upstate New York, which in this proposal would be called New Amsterdam, the region of New Amsterdam, wouldn't be able to survive without New York City. And I disagree. And I believe that there is evidence to suggest that that is correct. First and foremost, yes, Wall Street is 20% of the revenue for New York State as a whole. However, the number one source is personal income tax. And I believe that if we would create an environment in upstate New York that would be more friendly from a tax standpoint, just like the state of Florida, that you would have people leaving the metro areas and locating in an area that would be more tax friendly, and that personal income tax would then thrive. So I think that's number one. Number two, there's no doubt in my mind, especially knowing how local governments work in this area, that we would operate much better and more efficiently here in upstate New York, reducing the cost of government dramatically. In Chautauqua County alone, every week, the government wires over $600,000 to New York State just for its local share of Medicaid. Now think about that. And that's a program that is 100% controlled by downstate interests, and that is ultimately, it's the most costly Medicaid system in the nation. So just attacking that and making it more efficient, and I'm not talking about kicking people off the system, I'm just saying making our system look more like the state of Pennsylvania's system would in and of itself reduce costs. Also, Tom DiNapoli, our state comptroller, has said, and I quote, that there are billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse in our Medicaid system. And there has been an unwillingness to address that on the part of our state legislature. So if we could eliminate that waste, fraud, and abuse, we would be able to close the budget gap, even right now, as we are, I believe, but also in a state that is split up in regions, I believe we would be able to operate much more cost effectively.
Follow-up question.
Sure.
I mean, I know this is still theoretical. Would there be a governor of the state?
So the way this is set up, and again, this is, there's a loose framework, if you will.
Right,
There would have to be
that.
a lot more of a deeper dive. But essentially what you would have is 3 different state legislatures. You would have a governor, if you will, that would be more of a figurehead, is my understanding. And then, just like you have in New York City, you have borough presidents, right? But then you have the mayor. So it's kind of a similar setup, in that sense. And this is all subject certainly to however any final legislation would look. But I would say to everyone that to be open-minded. And again, this is not about rhetoric. This is about what can we really do to ensure that the things that separate us allow us to operate more efficiently, but the things that unite us are still there statewide.
So how serious is the effort right now in Albany to look at this?
Well, right now we're out of session, right? So there's been no committee meetings. So my hope is that when we go back and this piece of legislation is hopefully brought before committee and it's discussed, that we can find out how serious people are. And
Okay.
for those in New York City that say you'll never survive without us, I say give us a chance. And and that's and for those that are nervous about it up here in the upstate region, I would say, again, give us a chance. Let's look at this. We have the opportunity to, if we were to dedicate a little bit of money to it, we could actually look at this, do a study, and realize what the potential pitfalls are, and I think it's worth doing.
When you say give us a chance, who's us? Who's we?
I think us, when I'm saying anyone that is willing to support the idea.
So who's supporting it right
well,
now?
that right now it's largely the Republican conference
Okay.
in the state Senate and of course in the Assembly as well.
Any takers on the other side of the aisle?
Yeah, there's certainly people that are interested. There are some on the other side that are interested because they also see us potentially as a burden, right? And also let's not forget that there are people that can agree to disagree, and that's who we're looking for, right? If we can agree to disagree, and say that in New York City, this philosophy works well for the people in New York City, and in Western New York and the Southern Tier and the North Country, this philosophy works well for us and it doesn't work well in New York City, then let's agree to disagree, but also have a government that reflects that. Because right now, our government doesn't reflect that. Those folks and their philosophies in New York City are imposed upon us in upstate New York. And that's why I believe that we can still be one state and still be united in what makes us diverse, but at the same time have a government that reflects better the needs and really the desires of the people of the region that they represent.
So one size doesn't fit all.
That's exactly it. And we found that out most definitely during this pandemic. We found out that one size did not fit all. And that was what our whole restart plan was about, was the idea of breaking the state down into the 9 economic development regions and having those regions independent of one another when it came to the phases and how they would restart. And that, certainly there were issues there, but that worked much better than locking down the entire state until one region was ready. And this is kind of the same philosophy.
So if you had 9 economic areas during the pandemic, why are you proposing, or they, whoever, 3 chunks of New York State, not 9?
Well, and I would say 9 would be too many because you're going to have 9 layers of government. I think that as part of this, let's just say hypothetically this were to work. In the New Amsterdam region, which is all of upstate New York, one thing that I would certainly push for is more local control. So now each county and each region would have more of an ability to govern itself. That has certainly been my philosophy in my short time as a state senator, making sure that we give as much local control as possible. And when it comes to things like unfunded mandates, if there, that's a perfect example. And if there is a lot of times the part of the legislation that says what the financial impact is, it says no cost to the state. Well, that doesn't mean there's not a cost to the taxpayers.
You will do this, but we don't have any money for
Yeah,
it.
exactly. So, I think this is about autonomy. I think this is about local control, and I think it's can be done effectively and efficiently. It's not going to happen overnight, right? We're not going to flip a switch and do this. It's going to take probably years to put up the infrastructure that's going to be needed to do this, but I think it can be done.
Okay, last question on this topic.
Sure.
Only because you really got my interest on this. Why the title New Amsterdam?
Well, that wasn't mine. I'm a marketing guy. I don't think I would have picked that, but that was.
I sort of like New Chautauqua.
Yeah, exactly. The Western New York.
Right.
I think that's something that certainly can be worked out, the details.
Okay,
right?
I just found it kind of foreign because we don't use that title around here.
That's a pre-Revolutionary War term.
Right.
New Amsterdam, which is, if I'm not mistaken, that was what New York's first name was New Amsterdam, and I'm sure it had a lot to do with those folks that came over from Europe. So we'll call it a working title.
A plug name.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay, I want to get back to the agricultural committee that you were on as the ranking Republican. This goes back to a project that you worked on before leaving us at the county level. The whole project you work on with grains and things like that.
Yeah.
Where's that at now?
It's still alive and well. It's now called Empire State Brands. It shifted to that. The gentleman, Chris LaCarrata, is still actively pursuing funding. That project was awarded almost $3 million during the CFAs last year. It's about a $14 to $16 million total project, and he has been pursuing funding elsewhere and has been successful. Obviously, COVID has put a damper on and slowed things down. However, I'm working with my predecessor, Kathy Young, at Cornell.
Kathy Young.
Yes.
The name rings a bell.
Yes. A great lady, a great public servant who is now serving us so well in her role as the head of the food and agricultural.
You can make up your name.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's Cornell's the agricultural school, and it's the boy, now I'm forgetting. It's the Food and Agricultural Excellence, I believe, is the title, and she's the executive director. And we have been working with her, myself, Chris La Carrata, and all the other stakeholders. The IDA is still involved in this, and there are sites being selected for processing, and so forth. So that effort, and an effort to help diversify and strengthen our agriculture industry, is still moving along.
Excellent. I haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah.
And I think the last time I saw you, not here, you presented to my Rotary Club on that, remember?
Yes.
And so I just really was keenly interested. So I'm glad to hear that that's still moving in. Yeah, this COVID thing has really kind of like messed everything up, you know?
It's cramping our style.
Oh my gosh. So the other question I have along these lines, and you and I had this laugh, and I made this promise, I think the very first time I met you, was every time I see you, I'm going to ask you this question. So I'm going to ask you, and you know what it is.
I know what it is.
The Gateway Project, where is it?
Obviously the Gateway Project was going to rely heavily on funding to get it up and running. It was designed to be self-sustaining once it was built.
Right.
That being said, it's still moving along. We are, the IDA, here Chautauqua County IDA, is certainly something that this is a priority for them. As you know, the Loves Center is still in the process. This is
As far as I know, they're going to
the
knock
travel
down
center.
the old Colonial Square soon.
Yeah, exactly. And Loves is very much a supportive of the idea of a gateway center.
Great.
In my office every day, when I walk into my office in Jamestown, every day that I'm there, I should say, because I'm not every day in that office, but when I walk in there, those giant pictures are all over my office of the Gateway Center. You can't miss them.
They're great.
And I look at them every time I walk into that office. It is still a priority for me, and I think it would be a game changer. Right now, of course, the state is struggling with revenues.
It's spent its purse right now, I guess.
Yes, but you know what? This project, you look at the cost of the Welcome Center that was built on Grand Island. I believe it was around $35 million.
We'll do it for half.
Yeah, literally, yes. The estimate is about $14 million to do the Gateway project in Ripley, and that's also following all the guidelines when it comes to prevailing wage and so forth for a project like that. So it's an affordable project. It would make a difference, and in the end, if we do it the way that we are proposing, it would be self-sustaining. Right now, under the COVID conditions, that's difficult. People aren't traveling as much. People are reluctant to stop at places like that.
No, it's zooming right through.
Yeah, exactly. So, at this moment in time, no, but that should not deter us from trying to move forward.
Still in the system,
yes,
still in the hopper.
We're gonna move out of this. We're gonna weather this storm, and we should continue to do things that are going to improve our community and improve our economy here. And this is one of those things.
Great. All right. So now this is, I'm kind of give you the floor here a bit. If you are reelected, what are like 3 things you want to focus on, George, when you get to Albany?
I think number one, we want to continue to support agriculture and small business. I'll put those into one group, if you will. Agriculture is still the #1 industry in New York. Despite the fact that we have finances and everything else that people think of as the #1 industry, it is actually agriculture. And agriculture, farmers and agribusinesses are largely small businesses. 90% of our farms here in New York State are family farms. They're small businesses, and they are struggling. So supporting small business and reducing those burdens is my #1 priority. Secondly, I still believe workforce development is a huge issue for us here. If we can solve that problem here in New York State, if we can ensure that we have good workforce development that's robust, that our schools are focused on things like skilled labor and the trades and applied sciences and technology, not only will that be the key to keeping our kids here, because we talk about that, right? But now if we have kids that are skilled to fill those many, many open positions that we have, then we can help keep them here and have a good life and a good lifestyle where they can raise a family. Third, and I guess something that kind of all works in concert, is improving our infrastructure. Most importantly, broadband access. Broadband now is as important as sewer, water, and electric, and we are sadly far behind when it comes to broadband access here. So those are some basic priorities that impact this region in my district. Overall, I will say, and I'm going to cheat here and throw a fourth thing in here, if you will.
That's fine.
Is that we need to reform state government. It is quite honestly corrupt in so many ways. First and foremost, unlike local government, the people don't get their own voice. Myself, when I was a county legislator, I could introduce a bill. Didn't matter if I was in the majority or not. That bill would be discussed and voted on in committee, and then if I so choose, it would be discussed and voted on in the full legislature. That does not happen at the state level. The voices of the minority are silenced. And not even just the minority, but if you are a person in the majority and you are not given permission and you have a piece of legislation that you want to have passed and it does not fit the agenda, the political agenda of leadership, the three men in a room, if you will, it will not see the light of day. And that too is wrong. You can love or hate the governor and his executive power, but we will not even have a discussion on this because it's the leadership that won't allow it. So that to me is not open government. That is not government of the people, and that is certainly not a government that is accountable to the people, and that needs to change.
Okay, so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, gentleman from Silver Creek goes to Albany. How does a state senator help farms? What do you do? I mean, what can you do?
A couple of things. First and foremost, being on the Agriculture Committee, I have the opportunity to voice those opinions. One of the most devastating impacts legislatively on our farms has been the so-called Farm Labor Fairness Act. It was passed last year, signed in New York City, and it has it's set an overtime limit. And without going into all the details, I can tell you that it has hurt farmers. But more importantly, they created a wage board, a 3-person unelected board that only has the authority to lower that threshold from 60 hours to 40 hours, which would be, it would devastate many of our, if not most of our family farms. 3 people, unelected, given the power by the state legislature to make a major change to that piece of legislation that would be devastating. We have been bringing a lot of attention to this, myself and my colleagues, particularly in the Republican conference. I testified along with Andy Goodell and many others in the hearings that this 3-person board held press conferences, wrote letters, and did all kinds of advocacy. And I believe now, because of that advocacy, at this moment, they were supposed to give a result, they were supposed to give a recommendation by the end of this year. And I believe that we now have the support on both sides of the aisle to, at the very least, delay that. I've introduced legislation to delay it until 2024. I don't think you can make a judgment on the impact of this based on less than 1 year's worth of information. Especially this year, right?
This is skewed all over the place.
And because of the attention that we brought to it, the media went to seek out the original sponsors, as well as Senator Jen Metzger, who's the Democrat chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee. And even she said on the record to Spectrum News that she doesn't believe that they should change the threshold at this time. So those are the kind of things that we can do. Advocacy, bringing attention to things, and continuing to push so that we can ensure that agriculture gets as best a chance as possible to not only survive, but thrive here in New York State.
People I have talked to, including myself, have clanged the bang, the drum, screamed at the mountaintops about technical education, skilled labor force. What's not working? What's the problem?
Number one is the stigma that we still apply to things like BOCES and to JCC and all the other programs that are vocationally focused. Those are since I was in high school 35 plus years ago. that was for the kids, the troubled kids, and the kids that weren't good enough to go to college. It was a lie back then, and it's still a lie.
Absolutely.
And that's the stigma. No, the number one thing is the stigma that we apply to it. Number two is its resources, right? It's having the ability to make that shift, both at our two-year schools and in P-TECH and others, to provide the most up-to-date technology so that these kids can come out and be successful on day one. But let me also say, it is working in many ways. And I will tell you this because we have kids that are graduating from those programs that are going right into the workforce. And they're staying here in Chautauqua County. And these kids we are starting to see a turn where we are getting more and more kids into skilled trades. So I won't say it's not working entirely. I'm saying that we need to do more to improve it. And I believe starting, when I became county executive, I'm not giving myself credit, but starting when we shifted the conversation from there's no jobs here to there are jobs, we need just to have the people with the right skills. I believe that conversation hopefully helped change the direction, and I believe we're moving forward now as a result.
Thank you. Folks, you've been watching Chautauqua Candidates, and my guest today is George Borrello, who's been going over some plans that he has, if reelected, and some thoughts on how the state should be moving forward. And I promised you would have the last minute to say whatever you want to say. It's all yours, George.
Thank you very much. I would like to say first and foremost that I am very proud to represent this region in the New York State Senate, and that I am hopeful for the future here. I believe that people are reassessing where they live and their quality of life, and I believe we can benefit from that here in Western New York in the Southern Tier. I want the chance to go back to represent you again even stronger than I am now as your state senator in what will be my first full term, and I am looking forward to the future here. We are resilient people, as I said earlier, and I truly believe that not only will we get through this pandemic, but it will teach us much about what makes us resilient and why this is the wonderful, unique place that it is. And I think more and more people will understand that, and I'm hopeful that our region will not only survive, but thrive and prosper going into this new era that we are now experiencing here.
George, thanks for joining me today, and as always, it's always a pleasure to see you.
Same here, Doc.
And best wishes.
Thanks.
No matter how this all works out, we're still going to be friends, right?
Absolutely, always.
All right.
Thank you.
Folks, you're going to be able to watch this particular edition of Chautauqua Candidates at 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. throughout the week of October 3 through the 9th, in case you wanted to see us all over again. So, folks, we'll see you at next time, and we're going to have more interviews coming up throughout the day. George, be well. Take care. Thanks, folks, for watching.